The Trek Fuel EX8 made it into the top 3 of Trail Bike of the Year for 2018 at position number 3. And that's because it is a really well sorted package, a really tight frame, a great riding bike at a decent price point. But it won't suit every rider out there. The Fuel name has been in a number of bikes from Trek over the years, but the Fuel EX is a longer, slacker, slightly burlier version of their cross-country bike. This means that it's much more composed on bigger terrain, but it's still definitely got that cross-country DNA running through its tubes. This heritage is definitely apparent when you jump on the Fuel EX, as it's a bike that's got a very taut package, not only in the frame's construction, but also in the suspension and feel through the wheels. This is a bike that rewards those who like to put the effort in to get to the top of the hill fast and then pound the pedals on the way back down again. Trek used their Alpha Platinum aluminium tubing for this bike. It's used across their range. The frame itself gives 130mm of travel through the ABP suspension system, which is almost a 4-bar, almost a linkage-driven single pivot. Basically, the rear pivot in the triangle is concentric around the hub. Fox has supplied the suspension for the Fuel EX8 At the front there's a Fox Rhythm 34 fork with a grip damper. That's at the bottom rung of Fox's 34 lineup, but don't let that put you off. We'll talk about that in a minute. At the back there's a Fox Float performance level shock, and that comes with Trek's specific reactive tune in there. The bike is driven along by SRAM's GX Eagle 12-speed group set, and it's brought to a stop with a pair of SRAM BikeRadar brakes, so pretty standard stuff, and stuff we're definitely happy to see on a bike like this. A lot of the finishing kit, that's the cockpit, the seat post, and the wheels, comes from their in-house Bontrager brand. You get a set of decent Line 30 wheels, which are kind of a spec highlight within the bike. Normally you'd expect to see Bontrager's own tyres on this bike, however, supply issues meant that our test bike came with Schwalbe knobby nicks in a speed grip compound. That's the Addix with the blue line around it. It's a slightly harder compound than perhaps we'd have liked. Usually it would come with a Bontrager XR4 tyre, which we quite like. At the moment we don't know exactly what's going to be arriving in the shops, as there are supply issues with the tyres, we believe, from Taiwan. So depending on when you buy the bike will impact on what tyres come with it. You get all of this for £2,700 or €2,999 or $3,199, making it the least expensive bike in our entire test. I think Trek have done a good job of speccing the bike. The GX Eagle group set is great, the Rhythm 34 fork, though cheap, is actually really good. The only real disappointment is the dropper post, which is Bontrager's own, which I didn't particularly get on with. We've tested the line dropper a number of times over the past couple of years, and we haven't found it necessarily the most reliable, especially in wet or cold conditions when it gets pretty sluggish and does need a fair bit of TLC to get working nicely. When it works, it's fine. The lever is nice, the head is nice, but we would probably rather see something else on there. Overall though, I think it does prove that you can get good value for money out of one of the bigger cycling brands. Given it's one of the cheapest bikes in the test, it's actually not that surprising that it has one of the cheapest forks. But the Rhythm 34 is a fair performer, especially at this price point. It is relatively linear, and if we were going to live with this bike for a little bit longer, we would have definitely put some volume spaces in there to give that little bit extra ramp up towards the end of its stroke. However, it's very smooth, it doesn't spike. The grip damper works pretty well. You can lock the fork out and you can run it fully open. The mid positions within the damping don't really do masses, I don't think. But as I said, it's the cheapest bike in the test, and this fork has always surprised us with its smooth, reliable performance. As you'd expect from a bike with the lineage that the Fuel EX has, it is very good at climbing hills. The reactive damp shock helps keep the pedalling efficiency up there with some of the best bikes in this test, so it's never really going to hold you back, and you can lock the shock out should you really need to, say on smoother road climbs or fire roads. When you're descending and the platform is open, it seems to sort of stay open once it's opened. The rear suspension is very competent. It deals very nicely with bigger hits, it deals with trail chatter very easily as well. It is perhaps a little bit prone to sitting in the middle of its stroke, so you might want to experiment with your shock presses a touch, but there's very little wrong with the suspension performance overall. It almost complements you if you're an active sort of rider who's looking to sort of play around and pop and hop and have a bit of fun with the bike. Trek aren't necessarily known for pushing the boundaries of geometry, but the Fuel EX is actually well shaped. You've got a 465mm reach in a 19.5-inch frame, which is effectively a size large. You've got a 67.7 degree head angle, not particularly slack, but for a bike of this ilk, I think fits it pretty well. And you've got a 74.7 degree seat angle, which is fairly steep, puts your hips in a nice position over the pedals, and puts your weight nicely balanced within the bike. While Trek might not be at the forefront of geometry in terms of length and slackness, they have been working for a number of years now with 29er geometry. This all started with Gary Fisher back in the day, and it's culminated in the development of their G2 geometry. This is a longer fork offset, which reduces the trail, which quickens the steering of what can be a traditionally sluggish feeling 29-inch wheel. The result of all this work is that you end up with a bike that's a really fun bike to ride. It's really agile, it's really reactive to rider inputs. It's not a massive slugger of a bike, but it's one that if you put a bit of finesse into your line choice and into the way you ride it, you'll get a lot out of it. It will carry speed, it will pick up speed really easily as well. Yes, a bigger fork or a slacker head angle might make it better suited to steeper trails, but I think that would kill the personality of this bike, which is one which is just out there for a bit of fun, but definitely rewards you if you put a lot of effort into getting it back up those hills. It's not the smoothest of riding bikes, it doesn't feel clattery as such, but there's a lot of feedback through the bars and through the pedals. Not in a bad way, it's just not a big sofa of a bike, and I quite like that because you really know what's happening underneath your tyres. You can definitely feel the XC heritage in the Fuel EX. But don't let that fool you into thinking this is just a bike for big hills and for riding all day long. Yes, it does that really well, but it can still get to the bottom of the hill pretty competently. The pricing is excellent, really, for the kit you get on there, and the spec choices have been made with a lot of thought. If you do like a bike with plenty of character, a lot of feedback that feels nimble, agile, fun to ride, but you're not necessarily looking for something to tackle the steepest of trails, the Fuel EX8 really is a good option. And if you really want to get between the XC tapes, you could definitely do that on the Fuel EX.